Check into Cash.
The cash you need today is waiting for you at Check Into Cash. It's your money, so come in and get it.
Get a payday advance today for up to $425. At Check Into Cash, we make it quick, easy, and confidential.
The cash you need is right here, so stop worrying and stop in to Check Into Cash today.
Borrowers often use payday advances over a period of months, which can be expensive. Restrictions apply. See store for details.
You are listening to WOOP-LP, Cleveland, Tennessee. WOOP FM is a broadcasting service of the Traditional Music Resource Center, and we play America's original music.
Where'd the old town go? They moved it on north of here in a shopping mall.
Good morning and welcome to Old Town Cleveland here on WOOP FM 99.9 or on the internet at www.woopfm.com. You can call us here at 614-5553. Good morning, Debbie Moore. Tell me what's going on.
Good morning, Ron. It is December the 26th, 2015. We had, instead of having a white Christmas, we had a very wet Christmas. I believe we had 4 inches of rain yesterday. And what I hear on the internet, Copper Hill's about to wash off the map. The Cory River has come over the banks, and not only that, they've had a big major water pipe break this morning, and they've got water coming. They've lost thousands of gallons of water that way, so they are just having a messy time up on top of the hill in Polk County.
That's pretty rough when you have the water coming out of the water mains and water's coming out of the river. That could be a wet day.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and there was a slight rock slide, I think, yesterday up on 64 Highway. So if you're out and about this morning, be careful. There's water standing. We saw the great Candies Creek Ocean this morning, too, near our house, way out of the banks. Cahola Creek's way out of the banks. And so I'm sure Chattanooga's really suffering from all that. We trust everyone had a very Merry Christmas, and we're glad to be with you this morning. We have a very special guest in the studio with us this morning. He's been a long-time friend of ours, and very excited that he's here. And I think this is going to be one of those shows at the end I'm going to say, you're going to have to come back and tell the rest of your story. We have Randall Higgins with us today, and he's worked as a newspaper reporter for how long?
Well, I started at the Cleveland Banner in 72, went to the Chattanooga Times in 77, survived the merger of the two Chattanooga papers in 99 and retired in 2012, so that's about 40 years.
That's about 40 years, and we'll be talking about a lot of the local things that he covered during that time, and I know that he's been on quite a few adventures with us over the years. Mainly, I recall that you went to Caney Creek with us.
Yeah, that was quite a day. I enjoyed that very much. It just to see a place where that had almost been forgotten, and where so many people had spent so much of their lives and done such important things for the region, you know. And
I think that we caught it just at the right time.
Yeah, I think so. That was because if you hadn't have done what you did then and did the movie and all of that, it would have probably eventually been forgotten by everybody.
Mm-hmm. Or the stories get told by somebody that wasn't actually there, and I think that was the good thing. Yeah. When we were doing that project, I had contacted Randall, and he seemed so interested in it. When we got ready to go on site, he was the only newspaper person that went with us, and a photographer went with us.
Yeah.
Who is that guy?
That guy was, I can't think of his name at the moment.
I can see.
Yeah. He was very excited about it too.
He was extremely excited.
Very proud of the photos he came back with.
And then I'd like to see all of them. It was in April, and the wildflowers were starting to bloom, and he was really intrigued with things that he had never seen before as far as the flowers were concerned. And I'm sure you've seen the documentary when you see we were talking about who all went with us that day, and there you are. And I thought, well, there's Randall. I'm glad we caught a picture of you that day. What a fascinating story that is.
Yeah, and it's the kind of thing, so many stories that just sort of linger with you. And every time I go by the river, that particular section, that's the first thing I think of, you know, is and
you know, when they, over the course of the last few years, they have built a new restroom area with a little parking lot right there at Big Creek. So when you get there and you pull off the road and park, you are actually at the western end of Caney Creek. And a lot of people will ask me, well, they can't figure out where it is because obviously you can't see anything from the road anymore. But
when I have people in the car with me and we drive by there, I say, over there is Caney Creek, and people used to live there, and they don't believe it.
Well, in 1960s, when we'd be driving by there on Sunday afternoon, my dad would say, there used to be a swinging bridge right there, and people lived over, and I was like, yeah, right. Yeah. Why would they live on that side?
There's not enough room over there.
Yes, and I think that's the amazing thing to see in person is that you have the mountainside, you have the house, you have the little railroad track,
and then the river.
And 6 feet of dirt and the river. So I imagine that there's water up in those foundations today, don't you?
Of course.
I think so. And the people who live there talk about hearing the fruit jars and the cellars float around, you know, when the water would get up.
And I was just thinking too, continuing with Polk County, you know, like you say, every time you hear something or see something, it reminds you of something from the past in your career. Do you remember the 1990 Copper Hill flood?
Yes.
That's what came to my mind this morning when I saw those news stories, you know, about that.
I remember seeing a refrigerator floating down.
Yeah.
Well, it was actually a big walk-in freezer from a restaurant.
Yeah.
It wasn't just a refrigerator.
And to this day, the stores around there, you know, they have the high water marks on their walls with signs pointing, this is how high it got. You know.
Ron and I have been working on a documentary of Ducktown and Copper Hill for over a year now since I got sick, and we kind of had to put it to a halt, but we're getting ready to crank that thing back up. And Mr. Jabberley and his family owned a store in downtown Copper Hill. And someone said, okay, there's going to be water in the store. So he went down there he was a photographer for schools and things. And he thought, oh my gosh, I need to make sure those pictures and the records for the store don't get wet. Well, when he got there was already enough water that he couldn't get the door open. But he went upstairs. It was an outside entrance, went upstairs and knocked on the apartments, people who lived in his apartment buildings, and said, you guys need to take the boats and get on out of here. Well, by the time he got them all out and he had tried to get down into the store and couldn't do that, he came out and all the boats and the people were gone. So he spent the night looking out the window. And he said, as a photographer, he's saying, boy, do I wish I had a camera.
Yeah.
He said the appliance store across the street, the appliances started floating and then busted out the window, and then there's all these dryers and washers and things floating down the street.
I interviewed some families at the time. I think they were from the other side of the river, McCaysville, but they wouldn't go back in their houses because it came up so fast. They were afraid it would happen again, so they stayed outside their houses for like a day or so. Yeah.
What about the 73 flood? It's 73 or 70. We had the tornadoes in 73.
And the tornadoes in 74.
Did you remember the 73 flood here in Bradley County?
Kmart.
Oh yeah,
okay.
Was
way up into Kmart.
That reminds the Kmart thing reminded me. Yeah, that whole intersection there was underwater.
25th Street was just underwater.
We know J Mac Circle down off South Lee Highway. Half the houses, water was up on the roof. There from Candy's Creek.
And also something even more recent, the rock slide this weekend on 64 in Polk County, you know, brought back memories of I think it's 09, the one that happened then and shut things down for months.
Were you covering that?
Well, I got a story about that.
Okay.
We had gone we had gone, my photographer and I had gone up there. A rock slide had already happened. The road was already closed, and we were there to do. And of course, by now, technology has advanced so much that you can't just go get a picture. You got to have video for the newspaper website. So my photographer had set up his tripod and had his camera going and all of that about all the TDOT people milling around the rock slide over the road. And there was this lady there. She's an archaeologist. She was with TDOT, and I wish I knew her name because she's a hero. She was up into the rocks, and we were, milling around down below the rocks, and she yells, "Get back, get back, get back." She heard the rumbling underground before the rest of us knew what anything was about to happen. And she came off those rocks, and about the time that all of the people with video cameras got back, here it came. And we all got it on video. And that video went viral. Our newspaper video, I know, was on some of the networks, but I think she saved lives that day.
Oh, she sure did. There's that one picture, I think it's a police car that he gets in it and he's backing up, and as he's backing up, the whole side of that mountain comes off.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think she definitely was a hero. And Ron keeps saying that if there have many more rock slides, we'll just have to give Copper Hill away.
Well, there's still Corridor K out there somewhere.
Yeah, the certain parts of that mountain comes off down in the big curve down there. That could literally stop the river.
Yeah,
I mean,
it could.
If you've ever seen the rock slide up on Highway 40 near Asheville, now we see and that was a big one. The one in Asheville was like an entire mountain moved 40 or 50 feet over, and if that entire mountain moves up there, we would see a new lake.
Yeah. We have a son that lives in Greenville, South Carolina, so we go through that mountain gorge to see him. Just recently for Christmas, and it's amazing the big chunk that's gone out of that mountain. Yeah,
I went through there right after one lane opened, and I wasn't sure that I wanted to come back through that way, but because it didn't look safe.
Well, there's been stories, and I know that they're true, but of other people that have been through the 64 gorge here that have just missed rock slides. You look in your rearview mirror and you see them.
I was through I had driven my mother through the night before that rock slide. We had driven up. Just given her a change of scenery. We had gone up there and turned around and came right back down through there, and then the next day that big slide happened.
Some of those rocks would have took your Volkswagen off.
It certainly would have just left a big greasy spot.
I know going across Mount Eagle, I've come across Mount Eagle and rocks went in front of me, big rocks, and then as I drove past, I've had rocks come down.
Yeah, rolling with some velocity there.
There's always a good side though. That rock slide. Then there was an 81-mile detour, I think it is, through Tellico Plains one way, McKaysville, Georgia the other way. I took that as a reporter, talking to people along the way, and I was stopped at this little bakery in Tellico Plains, and of course they'd never seen that much traffic before. They had a real good 6 months there.
Yeah. Coming out through Coker Creek.
Yeah. People had to stop and get their coffee and everything there.
When we had invited Randall to come on the show, it was kind of like, well, I don't know what I'll talk about. Did coming on here refresh some memories for you?
Yeah, it was like I was going, whatever in the world will I have to say for that length of time? Can't be anything much. So I sat down and started making a list of things, and about after 3 or 4 pages, I'm going, good grief, no wonder I'm tired.
All right, what is the biggest story you worked on? I mean, if you had to come down to 1 or 2, what would it be?
I think I'd have to say the Militia Gibson child abuse story.
And that was a huge story.
That was one of the last stories, or it is the last story I did for the Cleveland Daily Banner, was cover the trial for it anyway. And that little girl actually intersected my career more than once. Back after I first started at the Banner, I was their police reporter at first. And as police reporter, you're going to all these crime scenes and wrecks and stuff like that. And back then, this would be, early 70s, local police patrol cars were not as equipped as they are now. So a lot of times I would be the only guy on the scene with a camera. So a lot of times I would be taking pictures that would end up in case files as well as in the newspaper. And so they got to know me, police did, that I could do that. So one night, late at night, I got this call from a detective that wanted me to come to the Bradley Hospital. And there was this little baby girl there. She had been abused. And I was there to take pictures of her. She was 11 months old at the time. And I took pictures of her and her bruises and all of that. And strictly for the police. And didn't get much attention, as I recall, publicly at the time, but of course that was Militia Gibson, and about 3 years later, as a 4-year-old, she had passed away from, well, they took her away, the state took her away from the family, and then had returned her to the family, which was one of the great tragedies, many great tragedies of that story, and they had returned her to the family, saying she'd be better off there, and of course that's when Ronald Maddox and her mother, Wanda, were charged with her death then. But and the thing is also that at that time child abuse was not considered the serious crime it is now. It was that case changed state law and brought national attention. The networks were here to this problem with child abuse, and of course we've never looked at it the same since. And it did have an influence on my career because I've covered crime off and on over 40 years, politics and everything else too. But whenever a crime comes up that involves a child, it just sort of locks in my attention span, just totally. So it's had, and of course she still has a positive effect today. As you know, the CASA, the Child Advocacy Group, have a memorial walk for her every year. That's one of their main fundraisers.
So over the course of 35 or 40 years, she's come in and out of your life several times, I would think.
Yeah,
that you've had to re-report on it.
Mm-hmm. There was a lot of changes in state law and a lot of changes in personnel, too. There was people who lost their jobs over that particular case.
Exactly.
Quite a few people. I forgot the number, but it was...
That was the first time I won a journalism award too. Myself, the Banner team that covered that, because there was so many facets of it. It took more than one person to do it. But Sandra Rowland, Dan Gilley, a guy named I think it's Bill Hatcher, and myself won a journalism award.
You run around with some characters there, didn't you?
I did. I think Bill's gone now, but yeah, there was quite a group.
I know Robert Lawson was one of the detectives involved in that.
Right.
And interviewing Ronald Maddox, I remember him telling me he sat on his hands during the interview to keep from slugging him.
Yeah, I can imagine that.
He just, just a natural urge just to reach across there and just hit him between the eyes as hard as he could. But he said he sat on his hands because he knew that they had to have everything right to get the prosecution. Because
well, when they walked him into the, of course, the trials were held in Athens because of publicity. But when they walked him into the courthouse, there'd be a crowd of people out there to watch. The kind of thing we later learned to call perp walks. But there were there was angry crowds around. Just
Wow.
Well, I know other stories too that I won't share because there were definitely threats against Mr. Maddox.
Oh yes, oh yeah.
And I can't tell you who it was, but some notable names was really willing to kill him. And that's how much hatred there was here.
Yeah, it was the whole town was very emotional.
Of course, I think the news channels called us a sleepy little mountain town.
They did, yeah.
That's
well, this area of the country's always been kind of looked at that way. Remember when the fair came to Knoxville, it was the scruffy little town, scruffy little city.
It was pretty scruffy, wasn't it?
I think that the fair improved Knoxville quite a bit with the roads and
Definitely
Dollywood came in, and it's a whole different world up there now. Randall, how has the news business changed from that first day that you worked to the last day you worked?
Well, as I say, I was been jotting down some notes on that, and my very first experience with newspapers was before the banner. Actually, I went to Tennessee Tech as a student out of Bradley Central High School. I thought then I was going to become a chemist, but I got to
newspaper reporter. It's almost the same thing.
But I got to be editor of the Tennessee Tech Oracle student newspaper, and to do that you had to go down to the Cookeville Herald Citizen, because that's where it was printed, and that was where I met the Linotype machine. Hot type, it was for many years the way you printed pages for a newspaper. And you're sitting on this seat, and down below you is actually hot type, hot metal. And you've got a keyboard in front of you, and you're typing away. I never actually did this, but I watched it. They would never trust me to do that. But you type, and that forms hot molten letters that drop into a tray that form the body of the story you're typing. And the poor guy that's doing that is looking at a screen where everything is backwards and upside down. So. So those guys, that was a talent. But by the time I came back 2 years later from in '72 from the Army, everybody had gone to cold type. Cold type is like photo typesetting, where you basically your story is a picture is made of your story, and all of those negatives from those pictures are then assembled on a page, a newspaper-sized page that's also photographed, and that's put on the metal drum on the printing press then, and from that comes the printed page. So we went from that to, by the time I got to the Chattanooga Times, sometime around late 80s, I guess, or early 90s, they were switching from that to digital. Well, actually, it wasn't exactly digital, but they were going to computers anyway. So the day we went to computers, was a day that had a lot of television guys in there. I had one guy, with a camera over my shoulder as I typed on an old Royal typewriter, and they were saying, this is one of the last times you'll see something like this, So I went from hot type to cold type to computers.
It's the difference in the sound too.
Oh, it's not only sound, it's smell too. When you walked into an old newspaper room, because there was no Google, so you had to keep stacks of old newspapers that you might have to go back and research something every now and then. So there was this dusty smell that was in a newspaper room. Every time you walked in, you knew you could be blindfolded and you would know you were in a newspaper newsroom.
Mm-hmm. So, what about spell check? Does that help any?
No, because sad stories can be told about reporters who relied on spell checking, because spell checker doesn't care what the word is; it just makes sure
convert it, doesn't it?
The alphabet is right. Yeah.
Yes, I had to turn it off my phone because I'm sending out some crazy messages when that autocorrect.
Yeah.
So. But, I guess it was easier to change once you, after you had the computer and you typed the whole paragraph and you didn't like it, you go back and change it pretty easy.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, you're remembering now the cut and paste bottle.
Yes.
We had a big bottle of glue, probably about a quart-sized bottle or bigger of glue on our desk, and the paper came in reams. It's kind of like toilet paper, but a little bigger and a little wider, and you type on that, and when you're finished, you just rip that out of your typewriter. And if you see a place on that roll or that ream of paper you've just been typing on that this paragraph belongs up there instead of down here, well, then you rip the paper apart, get your glue pot, and paste it in where it's supposed to go. Mm-hmm. Which is, I guess, where the term is still used in computer world, some called cut and paste.
Cut and paste.
That's exactly what it is.
I hadn't thought about that. That makes perfect
Okay,
sense.
what does 30 mean at the bottom of an article?
That means you're done. I don't know where 30 came from as what the history, why 30 and not 20, but that's just what everybody typed at the very bottom.
Or three number symbols, right?
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes three number symbols are 30. If you've ever seen a news
you
release,
had Well, yeah. Whenever I started with the Times before we went electronic, what I would do, I might be at some place like Mont Eagle, and the first thing you do after you've got your story, if it's a breaking story and you've got to get it there back to Chattanooga right now, the next thing you do is find a phone booth. And I had a fellow named Jim Corbett and I worked together, and if I was out in the field, he was in the newsroom and vice versa. So I'd call Jim and I'd start dictating my story, and he knew it was done when I said 30. So
I don't know the origin of that one at all. Okay, one thing that surprised us about the Caney Creek story that you did for us is that it ended up on the front page.
Mm-hmm.
And how many times did you have a story on the front page, do you think?
I have no idea.
Oh, okay. You had several big stories like that.
Over time, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, of course, after I went to the Times and I was covering the entire region, there was several national stories that I did. The coal mine disaster in Whitwell that came along, and 13 coal miners died in that cave-in. That was national news too. It wasn't local news here in Cleveland, but it was national news. And
what year do you think that might have been? I don't.
Early 80s, maybe.
Early 80s.
Yeah.
Okay. I vaguely remember that.
What about the bait farm when it blew up?
Yes, that was. I was at the Times at that point too, but I lived here in Cleveland even when I worked in Chattanooga, and I don't remember exactly how I got word that had happened, but I jumped in my car and broke the speed limit getting up there, and it got there before a lot of the first responders had, actually. And in those days, crime scenes were a lot more relaxed as well. I could get out of my car and walk around and get pictures, and some pictures, of course, were not usable because of 11 people, I think it was, got blown apart. But was able to be there and see all of that and talk to neighbors who were just stunned, and that was a story that went national too, I believe.
Yeah, well, Ron was after the responders got there. Ron ran the front gate there for hours, good part of probably 24 hours. That everybody had to go through him to get on.
Yeah. Eventually, when they finally got the crime scene organized and everything, other reporters that got there were just amazed that I'd been wandering around where I wasn't supposed to be.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was interesting. That was I heard about it when it exploded. My office on Central Avenue shook.
Yeah, I could. Yeah.
So matter of fact, I was talking to our corporate people in Norfolk, Virginia. I said, I've got to go. Something's just blown up here in Cleveland, big. And I walked out my door, and of course I didn't see anything. And being a reserve officer at that time, about 15, 20 minutes later, hour later, somewhere in that time, phone call come in and says, alert your squad and go to Polk County to the bait farm. It blew up. I went, what? Well, that was my whole description. Go to the bait farm.
Yeah.
Well, I didn't know where the bait farm was in Polk County. It was a mile from the jail.
Yeah, it was right near town.
That's interesting. Hey, folks, you're listening to Old Town Cleveland here on Whoop FM 99.9. We got Randall Higgins here, a longtime reporter in our region. Huh?
I said a mile from the jail.
It was on Welcome Valley Road. You took 1 mile from Welcome Valley Road.
Oh, okay.
Right by the jail.
My brain was going, no, that's not right.
We've opened the phone here. If you got questions or comments, 614-5553.
Yeah, you're thinking about the new jail.
Yeah.
No,
what about the Tabernacle fire? Were you around then, over on Central Avenue?
Probably, but I don't remember much about it.
We still like the story of the first.
The Dobbin boys blew it up.
Yeah, they used some hair cream and something else,
bleach. Hair
bleach.
cream and HDH.
And
what year was that?
79 or 80.
Okay.
Somewhere in there. But the first policeman on the scene kind of stopped them, and they finally said, "We need to move. We need to move." And so this place exploded, and he gets on the radio and says, "We've got a fire on Central Avenue." And they said, "What kind?" He said, "A big one, a big one."
That blew the roof completely up about 4
He
or
said
5
the,
foot.
the roof came up 4 or 5 feet, and then,
Yeah.
of course, the whole thing collapsed.
I want to ask you about the Chattanooga Times and the News Free Press.
Uh-huh.
Growing up, that was two competing newspapers.
It was.
Did not agree with each other. Matter of fact, there are probably some people still don't agree with each other at works.
Mhm.
And I won't mention.
Yeah.
I won't mention Ward Gossip's name. No. No. I think Ward worked. Ward was a long time still there. Matter
Yeah,
of fact.
exactly.
But they was. They didn't like each other.
Well, yeah. Well, it was kind of a strange atmosphere because editorially, of course, the two papers were night and day, and as far as becoming modernized, they were night and day. When I got to the Times, believe it or not, we were still losing circulation because we had desegregated the obituary pages.
Oh.
And the Free Press was a little slower in doing that, but they eventually did it too. But there were people who actually canceled subscriptions over that. But
that's just a wild story in itself. There in the 70s.
well, this was still it was still a slow reaction. Actually, the Times desegregated right after the Civil Rights Act, so it was in the late '60s that they did. But they were still suffering
You got
from
there
that.
in the 70s.
Yeah,
You still seen
yeah.
Wow,
They were still suffering from that.
See, I would never thought of anything like that.
Yeah, well, it's hard to think of it now, anybody, but there were still people that were upset about that. But as far as the papers are concerned, it was kind of like two rival football teams. There was even at at the scene of anything or at a political rally or whatever. I'm watching them, their reporter, and they're watching me. They're seeing who I talk to, and I'm watching who they talk to. We're trying not to, everybody's trying to make sure that nobody gets anything that the other one doesn't,
And I guess it was a battle to see who had the big story on the front page, who had
yeah.
the best picture or best story.
Yeah.
Exclusives were really big.
Oh, yeah. Well, this is one of the last places in the entire country where there was actually a real rivalry between two newspapers, crosstown rivalry kind of thing, just like the old-fashioned days it used to be everywhere. But in most cities, bigger than Chattanooga, by then there was either one newspaper or there was morning and evening newspapers all run by the same company, which is what we became, of course, for a few weeks before they put the two together. But yeah, it was an intense rivalry for a while. Yeah.
Now, one newspaper was more Democratic and one was
Right.
more Republican. Is that the main editorial differences?
Yeah. I think news-wise, it was just rivalry. We wanted the story first, and we didn't want them to get it. Or if they got it, we wanted to keep them away from our sources and that kind of thing. But editorially, politically, it was that way. I was in South Pittsburgh one time, and I'm walking down the street. I don't remember why I was there, but there was this guy. He didn't know me, didn't know where I was from, but I was standing by the newspaper racks. There was a Times rack and a Free Press rack, and he looked at me with a sour look on his face and says, "I don't want to do it, but I got to see what this Yalla commie newspaper's up to." So he bought the Times.
Coming from Cleveland and the Cleveland Daily Banner,
Mhm.
were you shocked when you got down to the Times and seeing what kind of different battle it was there?
Not so much. Well, that I wasn't quite prepared for that kind of rivalry. No, but even beyond that, just the atmosphere at the paper, because at the Banner everybody did everything. I developed my own film from time to time and wrote the stories and turned them into Naomi Gibson and Beecher Hunter and got them back and rewrote what they told me to, and to edit it and so on. Down there, though, it was more regimented. One day I was in the composing room and I picked up a copy of a story. It was going to that had already been cutted and ready to paste onto a page. I was just going to help out, you know, and I was told right away, no, you're not that union. You can't do that. You know?
Right.
No.
A lot different. And I think something, what else I was going to tell you now? My mind went blank. And of course, small town friends, and it wasn't the same thing down there either.
Well, no. As a matter of fact, I love this story. When after the merger, we're all sitting in what used to be the Free Press newsroom, and there wasn't enough desks to go around, so some of us are sitting on boxes. You know, that was our desk for the moment. And Chris Vass, this wasn't a speech she made to the newsroom. She was just talking in privately. Said, you know, this is a lifestyle. It's not really a job. It's, you know, a career, and that's true. You know, it's because you go into, and it's even more true here, where you know you can be walking through Cook's Food Store or wherever, and somebody stop you and say, "Hey, by the way, you really messed up last week."
Yeah. They recognize you.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah. I have people that correct things that I say.
You never had someone call and say you spelled my name wrong or anything, did you?
Names, other things too. Yeah. Well, I had as far as embarrassment, I've forgotten exactly what the circumstances was, but I was supposed to be typing. The word was supposed to be hare, as in the animal, a rabbit, and I spelled it Hair. Mm-hmm. So you know, I heard from that, and also I still don't think I was wrong on this one, but. I think I had it right, but you've heard the term for people, Scots-Irish.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I use the term Scotch-Irish, and I got several letters. Scotch is for drinking. People are Scots.
Oh.
But I see that all the time spelled both ways.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't, you know. But yeah, people pick up on things that you don't really. You're surprised that they do, you know.
Did anybody get mad because what you wrote about the story?
Oh yeah, many times on that, you know, and especially in the days when I first started working at the Banner as a police reporter. Every day, you went to the sheriff's department and the city police department and copied down every name of everybody that had been arrested the past 24 hours, every DUI, everything, and we printed those. And those were probably the source of one of my biggest headaches. You know, what do you mean putting my you Randall Higgins have ruined my life? Mm-hmm. You know, so heard that quite often.
And when did they stop doing that?
It must have been in the 80s sometimes, because they were still doing it when I left.
Mm-hmm.
And
well,
you know,
after they lost the lawsuit.
Well, you know,
that's when you quit doing it.
They used to put everybody that applied for a marriage license, people that had gotten divorce papers, the jail dockets.
Some of that still goes on, even in Chattanooga. I noticed they still, but it's way back in small point type, you know, in the classified section, but they still make a list of property transfers and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
What's the cartoonist down there, Clay? Does the humorous political
Clay Roberts?
No,
Clay.
Anyway,
Bennett.
Clay Bennett.
Yeah.
I seen him come to. He gave a speech one time, and he was showing some of his cartoons, and hilarious. And he showed us a copy of the file of letters that people said thank you, and it was pretty small. And then he opened up this huge thing of people who had. And he tried to share some of those with us. Said most of them were not suitable for mixed companies, and some of them, he said, that they took it pretty literally and sent him items. You know, items that probably best used in the toilet. But he said that people really got mad at him.
Oh yeah. Closest I ever came to an actual lawsuit for something I wrote, though, happened while I was at the Banner and police reporter. It was one of those weekend roundup deals where you say, you know, police responded to this, and you know, and there was 2 or 3 different crimes. You know, you try to be very careful in it and word it so that everybody knows that these are separate events. You know, but I had a guy one time say that I was accusing him of burglary, I think it was, when he had been, I've forgotten now, he had been in a traffic accident or something, and on down a few paragraphs later, there's this burglary, So he tried to say that, that we were accusing him of being a burglar, so. But that actually went as far as taking depositions for a court case, but it never went any further than that.
What did the banner say? You're on your own.
Frankly, I don't remember. I really don't.
You say, well, you wrote it. Boy,
but we didn't have insurance, though, as far as being out on. I did. Responding to a wreck one time, had a dump truck run into me, and I was on my own on that.
So no workman comp.
Nope.
What about did you cover the 96 Olympics any?
Just some of the planning and preparation. We had so many sports people that were just jumping all over themselves to be a part of that. That I didn't actually cover any of the competitions and the whitewater rafting and all that.
That's what I was thinking, because really there was a news story there in the preparation.
Yeah.
And then after the event that happened in Atlanta, we had the big delays here and stuff.
Right.
I think probably that was news story.
Yeah, that. Some of the teams were actually housed at Lee University, and so the security for that, the security at the site, those kind of things. I did some stories on that.
Pretty
we had a
interesting
concert downtown for those athletes.
Yeah.
And I remember that they found a interesting package outside one of the restaurants. It's closed now, and apparently UPS had just dropped it off and went on. So I just know that Courtney McGrady come to get me and says, "You know the owner of this store? Let's go find him." Well, I know him, so I'm walking around. He says, "There's a bomb at it." I said, "Well, why am I going with you and there's a bomb?" I kept asking him. He says, "I can go home." I prefer to go home. So, but it seemed like there was always something. The day that the Times and the News Free Press, I guess it took a while for this merger to come out. Did you hear it coming?
Yeah, well, we did and we didn't. The rumor was out. The newsrooms were just abuzz with it, because by the time it got to our newsroom, the paper in Little Rock had already bought the Free Press, and the rumor was already out, they're going to consolidate the two. And actually about 2 months maybe before the actual consolidation, we had a newsroom meeting, and the upper level officials for our paper was telling us then, it's a rumor, don't worry about it, it's not going to happen. Just do your jobs, everything is fine, everything's safe. And of course about 2 months later, it was announced that the Holmbergs were actually selling out to Little Rock.
So did that mean since you were the Times, you had a better security for a job?
No. A lot of people at the Free Press that thought, since they had survived the buyout on their already, that they were safe. But what happened was the new owner sort of put everybody's name in a hat and decided right away, these people will offer jobs, these people we won't offer jobs. When it came to the Times side of things, it was kind of interesting. There's hardly anything they could do about it anymore, but practically everybody that had, like I mentioned earlier, the Times was a union paper too. Practically everybody that had union membership were not offered reemployment.
Surprise in itself.
Yeah. But a lot of people from the Free Press too. There were several people from the Free Press that didn't make it either. Talking about changes, technology changes. One of those folks was John Wilson, and of course he went out on his own then and started Chattanooga.com, and which has apparently become quite successful. He's a good friend of the city of Cleveland, I know. So he turned that situation around and made a success.
Who is or was the primary owner of the Chattanooga Times?
The Holmberg family. It was their family paper.
And where were they located?
Well, the original founder of the Chattanooga Times went on to New York and started the New York Times. So they're still, to this day, mostly in, I think Miss Holmberg and some of her family is still in Chattanooga, but mostly they're in New York.
So now, who owns the Times and the News Free Press today? Who is the owner?
I knew you were going to ask that, and I've been trying to. The Little Rock, Arkansas paper. I'm sorry, I just can't remember his name.
Is it
it's a conservative.
Big group?
He owns several newspapers and several radio stations, mostly in Arkansas and Texas, and then, of course, Chattanooga.
When I worked for Telecable, we were on by Landmark Communication, Virginia Pilot, Ledger, Star. I think there are 27 newspapers, 15 newspapers, television stations, radio stations. We did own the Weather Channel and a few other things, but it was big like that, and just...
Well, the Holmberg family, the New York Times owned a conglomeration of newspapers as well, from Florida to New York.
New York Times pretty big.
Yeah.
Well, that's so. That first day, everybody showed up in the office after here's Chattanooga Times, here's News Free Press. What was everything lovey-dovey, kissy-kissy?
Relief more than anything else. The people that were there had a job.
Okay, yeah.
But not so much. But
some of these guys may have been big rivals against each other.
We were rivals, but we also had known each other a long time, and even if we were rivals, sometimes out in the field, one of us would run out of film, and the other guy would say, "Here, you can have this, and here's some film I've got." So it wasn't absolute total hatred, but it took a while to kind of gel as a newsroom. And when they did, I think what happened over time is that it became a different paper. It's not the Times or the Free Press anymore. It's a totally different organization.
The editorial still is strange. Half the paper is Democratic, and then the other side of the editorial is Republican.
Yeah.
How does that work out?
Well, that's kind of unique. There's I don't know if there's any other paper quite like that, where you have one side on one side and opposite views on another editorial page, but they're proud of it.
Where is the editorial groups? Are they still in the same building? Or do they work together on everything else except for the editorials?
Yeah, everything is the same except those two editorial writers are in separate offices and separate parts of the newsroom. So.
Isn't that fun? So out of all the celebrities that you may have met over the years, did you ever get to interview a president?
Interview one, no, but I covered Ronald Reagan in Tennessee one time, including when he went to Athens. I covered George W. Bush on his second campaign when he came through Chattanooga. But we had some wonderful political writers. That's all they did. Bill Castile, Dick Copper did some of that. Libby Wan did some of that. And for the short time he was with us, John Meacham did some of that. So they usually did most of the politics, but I did get to cover a couple of presidents anyway.
Who are some of the memorable people that maybe we'd recognize the names that you had the opportunity to interview?
Politically?
Well, no, just in general. Who were you starstruck over when you thought, oh my gosh, I can't believe I'm talking to them? Anybody?
Well, you would think it would be somebody in politics or something, but no. Actually, those guys from Fort Payne, Alabama.
Oh, was that fun?
Whenever they were first started getting famous, they were still in Fort Payne, DeKalb County a lot. So we went down there quite often and did stories, about interviewing them and interviewing people about them and that kind of thing. And then when they had their very first. Everybody for a while there had their giant outdoor concerts, and brought in all kinds of celebrity entertainers, and thousands of people would come out and sit in the pastures for hours, to hear everything.
Wasn't that like free, or was it?
The first times out, yeah.
It was just kind of like giving back to the community.
Yeah. And so the very first concert they gave like that. We were down there for it, and I remember that because the photographer that went with me at the time, last time I saw him, he was in the crowd with some young lady, and he came up to me and said, "Here, take this film back to Chattanooga with you." So I did.
I did. Yeah. See you later.
I have no idea how he got back to Chattanooga.
Or if he ever did.
Yeah, if he ever did.
Oh, he did. I saw him later.
That's funny. I was just kind of thinking that sure.
So, were they nice people? I mean,
Oh yeah. They
down to earth.
They were, what they were wanting to talk about as much as anything is the big cattle farms they had gotten on Lookout Mountain. You know, they were more interested in that than anything talking about.
Very interesting.
Well, I guess they're all gone from there. Down. I guess they.
No, they're
they're there. They're there.
I know they go to North Carolina to.
Yeah, they go to Myrtle Beach, and
instead of traveling,
but they don't travel anymore. Yeah.
And they go there to their theater and perform. And I heard how many dates that they do a year. They take some breaks.
It's they're pretty restrict themselves anymore.
Ron got for Christmas. I guess it was Alabama's
greatest hits.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
What are their greatest hits? They got so many of them now. Probably the did more for country music in the bands. You know, it used to be just all individuals, and then they come along as a band, and then you've seen other bands come along.
That's pretty much the beginning, I guess, of the way country music is now, with store stage presence goes.
Right. Instead
of just walking out there to a microphone and picking and singing, they've got the lights and.
We saw them at McKenzie Arena before it was McKenzie Arena, and it was quite a show. I'd say that was in the early '80s when we're going to go see who,
not like Don Williams who walked out and sat on his stool and sang for an hour and a half.
Yeah, well, I like that.
I did too. He was a good singer.
If you're that confident that you've got that kind of talent, you don't have to put on a show. You just go out and sing for the folks.
I believe the first person we saw was Willie Nelson at the UTC Arena, and we were way up in the nosebleed section, and he
we were
comes
so
out
far back we couldn't smell any of the smoke.
Right. And he had holes in his jeans before that was cool, and a hole in his guitar where he had played so much he had worn a hole in. Yeah, and I thought, well, I'm glad he dressed up for the occasion,
Well, his show was a little bigger, too, though. It was a little bit bigger.
It was huge.
It was starting to come around the Alabama time when shows became a lot bigger.
Yeah.
I just remember him looking so small.
And so did ticket prices.
Oh, yeah.
Ticket prices went up now, and we recently went and seen Lone Star at Memorial Auditorium. They were here for the Firefighters Association's Chattanooga, Cleveland, and they had good rates on the tickets, and Deb and I went and saw them, and pretty entertaining.
We were out after dark, Randall.
As Pam and I get older, that gets rarer.
Yeah, Randall was telling me as we were standing out in the lobby that they had sat and watched the channel that shows the fireplace.
The Yule Log.
The Yule Log channel.
Sadly enough, we watched it for over an hour.
Watched the dog disappear and the
cat. As long as you didn't say, well, what's going to happen next?
Next week's show, we're going back to our beginning of Old Town Cleveland next week. We're going to have David Swafford's going to come on.
He was our very first guest.
He was our very first guest in 2009, and he's still writing that book about Wild River, but he's gone somewhere and done more research and got some really interesting things, but he's going to come on and talk about that. So get your Wild River stories ready. We'll want to hear those next week.
Right. And the week after that, Gary Owenby will be here. He's written a new book, and it's about the complete history of the Bradley Barrett's basketball team.
Wow.
From day one to today. So that's a pretty big history, and I'm sure we'll mention Jim Smitty once or twice along the way through there. Jim Smitty, longtime coach, at one time the winningest coach in America, and now it's been passed by a couple other people, but for a long time the winningest coach in America is a pretty big record.
Yeah, and I think that's before they played so many games, too. When did you graduate from Bradley?
I did, 66.
66. There was some sports going on at Bradley at that time.
Steve Sloan.
Yes. To mention one name.
To mention a name. Yeah.
Yes.
To drop a name.
Big time. Also, you had pretty famous uncle that was over there at Bradley at that time too. I
He
think.
actually is a cousin.
Oh, he's a cousin. Okay.
Krill, yeah.
Krill Higgins.
He went on to when they started Cleveland High School when
Left us,
that
yeah.
was organized. He went over there.
So that's about the time you were graduating then, wasn't it?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So Krill Higgins.
Well, Krill's dad was the oldest of the previous generation of Higginses, and my dad was the youngest. So there's quite an age difference between the two of us.
Krill went on, had a long time career in as a band director there, and was also involved in a lot of other community stuff. I know he was a director of one of the banks here in town. I can't remember which one it is today.
When my youngest son Trevor started at Bradley High School, he got into the drum line. Never let that happen to his son, by the way.
Yeah.
But
Practice is loud, isn't it?
it is loud, yeah. But anyway, he walks into the band room, and above the door, there's a big picture, big portrait, and it says Krill Higgins underneath it. And Trevor looks over at me and says, "We know somebody famous, don't we?"
Well, I guess Red here he is. Pretty much was it was a legend to us here.
Oh, very much so. I think there's still people that follow each other on Facebook. You know, that they have that in common. Krill Higgins is their common.
We had a conversation a couple of years ago when the house at the corner of Oak and First Street was torn down,
Right.
and it was a family place of yours. What did
Harley,
you know? Who lived there?
Harley Higgins, Krill's dad. Harley was born late in the 1800s when the family still lived in Gilmer County before they moved to Bradley County. And when the family got here, my dad was born here, but in Bradley County. But a lot of that generation came here as children.
Mm-hmm.
And they lived in Prospect, at the Prospect area. And as you know, Harley was probably the first person in our family to ever actually get more education than, just elementary school. He became a teacher, and and he also, by the way, delivered the Chattanooga Times for a number of years throughout Bradley County and Polk County. But he got into politics and became the county trustee for several terms. But he they lived there on Oak Street, for a long time.
That's for those of you who don't remember, that house was actually a log structure.
It was, yeah.
And it was torn down before somebody finally thought that, let's tell Debbie about this. And the city had come in and kind of condemned it and said that it needed to be removed. And I was hoping that if we could have caught it, we could have at least dated it. Because there's log structures here in Bradley County that were built in the 1930s. But there's a good possibility if there's a log structure here, it could be from the 1830s.
And of course, we didn't have foresight to realize this, but if that log structure, if it was been kept and restored, it would be just next door to where the spring
Taylor Spring
is going to be.
That was when I saw where the spring was at. I thought, oh my gosh, that building could have been part of that original structure. What community did you grow up in?
I grew up in south end of town. We lived on Blunt Avenue. Actually, we started when I was very, very small. We moved to Rockwood, Tennessee. I went to the 4th grade in Rockwood, and then when we moved back, we moved to Blunt Avenue, which is off South Lee Highway, and went to West Cleveland School.
Oh, okay.
Which no longer around. It's been around for many years, of course.
That's what behind the Dairy Cream.
Yeah.
Was.
And I've never seen a picture of that school.
I remember when the building
I may have one.
It seemed like
Class picture, anyway.
B&J Construction may have
They did. They used it as
their headquarters for a long time.
Yeah, after the school system left it, it became a construction company place. And after that school was consolidated with Black Fox Elementary, which is where I spent the rest of my life.
So it was in the county, but what's been the city for a long, long time now.
I wonder why that school was closed and where everybody went.
Yeah, we went to Black Fox after that. So that's where I was for. I went to West Cleveland 5th grade after we came back from Rockwood, and then 6th, 7th, and 8th I was at Black Fox.
Who was your principal at Black Fox, Mr. Cartwright?
Mr. Cartwright, yeah.
Walking on that tile. Walk on that tile.
That tile from the floor.
We've actually got the tile colored now, so you got a blue tile that the kids all say,
yeah.
walk on the blue line.
I attended the 8th grade there. We moved down to the south end of town when I got to the 8th grade. But Mr. Cartwright is family. I mean, he was my grandmother's first cousin, I believe what it was. So I can get all the lineages straight, but definitely one of our family members. And that didn't mean I got away with anything.
No, we didn't. I got away with less. He would have told you.
That's why
Ronnie, it's already 11
That's why Still Alive lives down in the same home place down there. So, hey, it's been.
And she not only when she sees us recognizes us, but she sits and quotes the Bible to us, and she's incredible memory. Mrs. Cartwright does.
Hey, we're going to take our mid-morning break. We'll be back here in a few minutes. Every week we play a song called "Gone Home." We dedicate that to all the people in our community, friends, relatives, neighbors who passed on. And this song's for you. We'll be back in just a few minutes.
You are listening to WOOP-LP, Cleveland, Tennessee. WOOP FM is a broadcasting service of the Traditional Music Resource Center, and we play America's original music.
Check into cash.
Need a little extra cash right away? Who doesn't? Turn your car into cash at Check Into Cash.
Get up to $4,000 with your car title only from Check Into Cash. You get more cash with a Check Into Cash title line of credit.
Turn your car into cash today at Check Into Cash. Visit checkintocash.com for the store near you.
$4,000 title line of credit maximum based on value of vehicle and ability to repay. Subject to credit approval. See store for details.
Guns, guns, and more guns. That's right, folks. U.S. Money Shops has just received a large shipment of pre-owned Glock 22s, 23s, and the awesome Beretta 8040D Cougar. These guns are law enforcement trade-ins that start at just $379.99 while supplies last. At U.S. Money Shops, there's no shortage of guns, so if you're looking for a great deal on a newer pre-owned gun, then check us out first.
Buy or sell or apply today. The better way at U.S. Money Shops.
Visit usmoneyshops.com for the location nearest you.
Hardwick Clothes, America's oldest tailor-made clothing company, has been making our best-selling navy blazers for 134 years. Visit Hardwick.com to get the $295 wrinkle-resistant travel blazer at the price of $195. Order by 3 and get by 10. Free next day air. Hardwick.com, America's oldest and sewn in Cleveland, Tennessee since 1880.
Streets of was done. Gone home. They have gone home. Gone home. They have gone home. Where'd the old town go? They moved it on north of here in a shopping mall. Where'd the old town go? Did my hometown get old, or just me? Did all my friends get old, or just me? Are they all gonna have to be told, or just me?
Welcome back to Old Town Cleveland here on Whoop FM 99.9, or you can go to the internet at www.whoopfm.com. You can call us here at 614-5553 like this caller. Good morning, caller.
Hello, Rod.
Hey, Miss Ella, how are you?
Hey, I'm snowed in right now.
You're snowed in? Well, we're flooded in. It's been raining for 2 or 3 days, and there's water everywhere.
Well, it come up here in the snow.
Oh, you got snow? Well, we got water. We've got animals lining up 2 by 2 down here.
Hey, you ought to see these trees. If I had a camera, I'd let somebody take my picture by these trees.
How much snow you got?
Probably about 2 or 3 inches.
Oh, wow, that much, hey, all right. Now, where are you at? Blackfoot, Idaho?
Blackfoot, Idaho. It looks more like 2 or 3 inches, but I can't really tell how much it is.
Go out there and bend over and stick your head down in it and see how deep it is.
No, it's cold out there.
Well, how cold is it?
I don't know. I ain't been out.
It's 73 degrees here.
It's crazy here.
It rained. Well, was Santa good to you, or was you good to Santa?
Santa was good to me. You ought to see what I got.
What did you get?
I got 3 little blankets. You know those little blankets you throw over you?
Yeah.
And I got 2 or 3 boxes of candy. And I got a whole big box. Well, it wasn't a real big box of fingernail polish. And I don't know what all. And best of all, guess what happened?
What happened?
My son brought me a cover, a made cover. Somebody made it.
Oh, like a quilt? Oh, how nice.
And it is beautiful, and I'm going to always keep it. I'm going to put his name on it.
Oh, well, that's sweet, Miss Ella. That was real sweet of him.
Yes. I got a poinsettia, too, and it's still alive. I got it in November.
All right.
Well, it sounds like you had a big Christmas, Miss Ella.
Oh, I did.
Try not to get drunk this New Year's now.
Hey, 20 I got from Whoop.
Oh, all right.
You know what I got with it?
What's that?
I got me 8 Coca-Colas.
All right. All right. Coca-Cola and candy, woo! And a cover. That's all you need, Miss Ella.
That's it.
All righty, Miss Ella. We'll talk to you next week. Thanks for calling.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bless her heart. Randall, she called us one day.
Where is this snow? I need to go there. I want to apply
Blackfoot, Idaho. She used to live here in Cleveland, and she has moved on up to where her son lives, and she's in a home there.
Assisted living home.
And so she still calls, though.
I think I'd want to swap some of this water for some of that snow.
Yeah, I think so.
Well, I'm glad this water didn't turn into snow.
No,
it went deep.
Yeah, be the blizzard of 93 again.
Oh, God.
Gosh. Speaking of that, I imagine that was quite the story to cover.
It was, yeah.
I mean, how did you get out into it?
How did you get out? Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it was kind of, well, of course, Ron
I
was.
stayed out in it for several days.
Yeah, I
Ron was
imagine so.
Oh, we got a call here, Ron.
Good morning, live on Old Town Cleveland.
Doc Hollywood coming.
Hey, Doc Hollywood, how you doing, bud?
Not too bad, Miss Ella. What a legend there.
Yes.
Hey, Doc, one week she called us and she was so excited. She said she had taken that blood test and it proved she wasn't crazy. Yep.
Good deal there. Good deal. Yeah, remember she won a Whoop Caller of the Month or the Year or something. She got a little trophy, and then somebody allegedly broke in her apartment over there. And the only thing they done was smashed up her trophy. A little bit suspect there, but nevertheless, I was listening to your program off and on this morning. I've been looking at the back of Ron's head now for an hour and a half.
Oh, I know.
The cameras froze, and the only way to fix it, Doc, is turn everything off and to start over again. We didn't want to do that.
They may be some help on the way. I talked to somebody earlier there about that deal. But hey, to your guest there, I heard you mention, sir, you was the newspaper business in '72 in Cleveland there.
72 to 77, I was at the Banner.
And I don't know if it came up or not so far in your program, but was there not a competing newspaper there for a couple of years?
There was the Cleveland Sun.
The Morning Sun.
The Morning Sun, yeah. It was here for, I don't remember, maybe a year and a half or so.
Yeah, they just couldn't compete with the big dog there, I guess.
Well,
it's hard to compete two newspapers in a small town.
In a market that's that small, yeah. It's because advertising gets divided up, and and the advertisers have their loyalties, and so it was kind of tough on them, I'm sure.
Well, and you sell ads by your readership, and when you're you're a newspaper, you don't have as many ads.
Yeah.
And so many readers.
You haven't built your circulation up.
So you charge less for your ads, which makes it harder to pay the payroll, and it's a tough thing to do.
Yeah.
Let me ask you this to your guest there too. Louis Exum, friend or foe?
Personally, you mean?
Yeah, the writer, Times.
Yeah.
Whatever he did down there.
Yeah. Frankly, I rarely met him. He was for me, being at the other paper. We were on 9th Street and he was on 11th Street, and never the two met usually. So I read him, but I rarely met anybody before the merger, believe it or not, at the Free Press, except reporters out in the field, of course.
I see. Being in the business there in the media, do you remember ever listened to as more radio personality than anything, the late Richard Parker Smith?
Yeah, WGOW, wasn't it?
Yes, and,
yeah.
He's been fired about every station.
Well, at one time there, anyway.
Yeah. Your take on him, sir?
Well, just again, somebody I heard on the radio. Radio is, this couple of folks here sitting beside of me. They have to be provocative. Yeah. So, I never know exactly what's true opinion and what's provocative.
Yeah, I especially with that character, but
sort of like on the Doc Hollywood show.
Yeah.
Yeah, doing Doc Hollywood's Dynamite Dance show tonight, featuring 70s, 80s R&B and disco, kind of a reflection back on the year of 2015, and I'm going to play Stacks of Wax and That's the Facts and all that good stuff there.
Something Doc does know his rhymes.
He does. That's pretty good.
Yeah, we'll do that there. Glad the Power State give me an opportunity to come in there and act a fool for a couple of hours on a select Saturday nights. And did back in the day there, my favorite, like I say, 70s, 80s, especially disco there.
Mm-hmm.
We'll be on there 6 to 8 p.m. tonight. Hopefully get a few listeners there. Look for Miss Ella's call there.
She may just do it.
All right, guys. Well, I'll hold you up. Enjoy your program. Best thing in town there, Old Town Cleveland.
Thanks, Doc.
We'll see you, Doc. Bye-bye.
Thank you for the call. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Doc Hollywood will be here 6 to 8 tonight. He don't make it every Saturday. He's just one of those guys. Oh, there's Doc.
Okay.
Doc just shows up sometime.
Well, and it's good. He usually, if he can get it through when we're on the air.
He has a regular job that keeps getting in his way.
Yeah, how about
that? Yeah, those could be annoying, those regular jobs.
We were talking about the storm of 93. Well, the guys from the cable office managed after probably 12 or 18 hours or something to at least come to our end of our driveway and get Ron, because there was a tree over our driveway and we'd had this enormous drift on top of it, and we were without power. But he went out and tried to take care of that. How did you get out and about to report on the blizzard? You
basically just driving very carefully, just whatever we could do. You know, there wasn't any plan or anything like that. It just
a lot of phone interviews, right?
A lot of phone interviews, but you know, you have to have pictures too. So I had to get out for it. So just driving through it. I have a neighbor that has they still have the same van, I think, that he had then, that ferried a lot of people around, including me sometimes during that time.
Mm-hmm. Well, we know that the interesting thing is we went out and started. Our cable wasn't damaged much, except there was just a lot of power out, and our powering stations had backup power, but they only last so long. So we were hooking generators to them, and people were stealing the generators faster than we could keep them hooked up. So finally,
or you'd come and there'd be 16 extension cords run to the generator.
And I did several stories too, but but we were lucky at my house, but a lot of people were without power for like 2 or 3 weeks.
Yeah.
Sure were.
So they had like frozen meat and stuff, that they had outside because it was colder, I guess, after a while, and they were trying to consume all of that before it went bad on them.
I saw people who had shoveled the snow away from a car door, and they were storing stuff in the car like a freezer or a refrigerator, because obviously it would work.
Yeah,
it was a pretty rough time.
I guess that was one of the bigger snow events in history. I mean, did you write it?
Area,
I mean, did you write it as this was a unbelievable
historic event? Yeah.
Well, I hope we don't see that again. And the tornadoes are always a story around here.
Yeah, and the day we had 5 here.
5 or 6, yeah.
That was about the end of my career, but that was unbelievable. I got a call at home about the first one that happened over around Georgetown, and of course I went over there and took pictures and talked to people, and we thought, okay, that's the tornado story for the day, come back and file a story about it. But then they just kept happening and getting bigger and more destructive as time went on.
I know that one stayed on the ground longer than I've ever heard of a tornado staying on the ground.
Oh, that one hit in Hamilton County, and then just went all the way through southern into Bradley County, Black Fox.
Down in Georgia, didn't it?
It got Ringgold.
Ringgold, yeah, you're right. Ringgold, then through Hamilton County, and then through Black Fox and Blue Springs Road, and over southley to US 64 and into Polk County.
Yeah, it was just like a big buzzsaw on the ground.
We lived right in the middle of those two, and we got roof damage, hail, and lifted part of ours up a little bit.
I stood at the back window and watched the one that hit Georgetown go up I-75. I could see the clouds going by. And then later that night we stood on the front porch and watched the one that went through Black Fox. And it could have turned and come our way just as easily as it turned and went over into the Blue Springs Valley. So we had 2 of them that went close enough to our house that we got hail off both of them and ended up with...
Now, I guess 74 was the big tornado that came through. Tornadoes all through the country. Zinnia, Ohio is the one where everybody remembers the most. But we had major destruction that time, too.
Yeah, that was up around Dry Valley up in there.
They come through Blue Springs and hit Oak Grove and a trailer park on Michigan Avenue Road. There was one lady killed in there. That's the only death we had.
Yeah. Close to Michigan Avenue.
It was interesting.
I remember that one up there because Richard Fisher was still the district attorney then. And I was already out at this dairy farm up there where things were torn up and cows were wandering around and stuff. And he stopped his car. I don't know what he was doing there, but he stopped his car and rolled down the window and said, "Get in, but there's another one coming through." And so we actually, for a little while, were like storm chasers, we're trying to catch up with it. And I told that to my wife later, and she goes, "You did what?"
With Richard Fisher? On top of that now.
Oh, that's funny. And when we were on break there, you were talking about being at the airport for an event. What was that? Or the Shoney's?
Oh, my wife. Early on at the Banner, early 70s, and some of you, I'm sure, remember, there was some Shoney's restaurant executives. They had been in Cleveland just to look at the restaurant here. They went back out to Hardwick Field to take off to go to wherever their next restaurant they were going to look at was. They just got cleared Hardwick Field, and something happened to the airplane, and it crashed into some people's backyards that lived close to the airport there. It was,
I don't remember that.
But there was 3 or 4 deaths, and I was not married at the time. I just got back from the Army, and I was down at Pam's house, and Naomi Gibson, our city editor, knew where I was, and called down there and said, "You got to get out there." So I did, and Pam went with me, which is where Pam learned all about what I'd be doing for the next 40 years, because she stood there in those people's backyards most of that night. Emory Bryant and the rescue people were out there with jaws of life, trying to get burned bodies out of an airplane, or what was left of it. And I was talking to the people in the neighborhood that had gotten very lucky, of course, since it didn't hit their house. And Pam was there with me most of that night, so she learned early on what it was I was doing. So many nights thereafter, over the next 40 years, I'd supposed to be coming home and didn't come home, because these last minute kind of things happen, So she's been very tolerant
and patient. Yeah. But talking about that though, from the time you started in the 70s to you retired. By the time you retired, you had a cell phone. There was no escaping the newspaper, I'm sure, at that point in time. But back in the 70s, you probably had to leave numbers where you were going to be.
Exactly. I had to let Naomi know that I'm at Pam's house, because in case they needed to find you,
Then they got pagers.
Yeah. After that was the pagers, and
then cell phones.
Yeah.
Was you working, and I can't remember the time frame when Richard Fisher was a district attorney?
Oh, yeah.
And he had to try some people in Polk County over the vote fraud.
Over the what?
Vote voting fraud.
Yeah. Okay.
Was you here then, or was that just before you started at the bank?
I don't remember what his term.
That was 78 or something, wasn't it, Ron?
Well, I would
77, 76.
I thought it was earlier than that. I don't know, but I remember Whitey Ramsey had lost the election by 1,700 votes, and they recapitulated, and he had won by 1,800 votes. I don't know how that happened. But
well, yeah, I do remember that. There was some, let's just say, jokes at the time about Polk County politics and recounts and stuff like that.
Yeah. Well, they were all registered voters. They were just slightly dead.
One time or another.
Yes.
Those people went to jail over that.
Yeah.
And I didn't know if you were a reporter then. I can't remember exactly what year that was.
I was at the Banner 72 to 77, and then went to the Times. And at the Times, I still covered this area a lot. So,
but I don't know when that was.
Well, you were election commissioner in 78.
Well, see, yeah, it was already gone then. But
yeah,
because it would have been
because I know that
Richard was no longer the DA right after that.
Okay.
I mean, he lost a lot of votes, so the Polk County people didn't vote for him again. And Jerry Estes became.
Yeah.
So it could have been late 70s. Then I guess maybe. I can't remember times and dates.
I just kind of remember vaguely all of those times that Richard Fisher and Judge Witt sort of locked horns with each other in the courtroom.
Yeah.
Those were classics.
They were classics. So
it's fun to watch.
Yeah, they. Sometimes it's fun to hear. I guess you didn't write down all the things they said.
Couldn't write that fast.
No, and some of those things they won't allow you to put in the paper. I don't believe.
Yeah. Very cool. What else is on your list over there, Randall, that you thought you might want to talk about?
Well, let's see. We have hardly even looked at the list, have we? Also, right after, sort of midway through my Banner career, is when Mort Lloyd's plane crash happened.
Oh, yes, yeah.
And, of course, he was absolutely, the celebrity around here.
Sure was.
And he had, at that time, just won the Democrat primary to run against Lamar Baker for Congress.
That's right.
And he was flying over to Manchester, Tennessee, after that election, and his plane went down over there, and he was killed in that plane crash. And as I say, I was at the Banner at the time, and as soon as they heard about it, the Banner rarely then or now goes too far afield from Bradley County, but this was such a big event that they decided they really needed to be there, but they needed to have Banner presence there because this is part of our congressional district too. So I went. I got in my car and drove to Manchester. By the time I got there, of course, a lot of the debris and the plane crash had been cleared away and stuff, but I still did some stories from there. And the thing about me personally, though, that was the very first time I had ever, I guess, very first time I was a foreign correspondent. So, way over there in Manchester. So that was kind of a thrill.
Makes it interesting. Do we have a call?
There we go. Hey, good morning, 11 Old Town Cleveland.
Good morning, Ron.
Hey, Red.
I was just wondering if that guy there's got any good stories on you and John Cook.
None that he's allowed to tell.
No, this is live radio. I can't do it.
If I took him out to dinner, would he take me to the place?
No, that might be another.
For food, yes, he would, yes.
We'll talk for food, yeah.
Okay, I'm going to get some good stuff on them, too.
But now, see, he probably dealt with John over at the sheriff's department. He had to deal with me over at the cable company, and I don't know if I ever did anything crazy over there.
No, but I know from what Jens used to talk on the radio, Jens was mean.
But not in the public.
They were just mischievous.
We never let Randall see any of that.
Yeah.
There's a story there somewhere.
Yeah, there is, but it's coming out in our biography.
And when will that be?
When we die. When John and I both, it's being released.
Okay.
Not a day before.
One of those posthumous things. Debbie will probably win a Pulitzer.
Yeah, there you go.
I'm just going to take mine to the grave with me.
There you go.
Might be a good idea.
Thanks, Red.
Bye.
Bye-bye. I wanted to mention to everybody, we talked about Flint Springs last week, and a new Facebook page has been started called Friends of Flint Springs, Tennessee, Friends of Historic Flint Springs, Tennessee, and that includes Red Hill Valley, Flint Springs, maybe all the way up to the John Martin House at what's now the Hoskins Farm, down to Mitchell Road, I think down to the Stockburger Farm. So if anyone has pictures of families or churches or school groups or just anything from that area,
documents,
right, please go to that site and post them or talk about it. And if you can't get it on there, if you'll bring it to me, I'll scan it and get it on there.
You're listening to Old Town Cleveland here on Whoop FM 99.9, or you can go to the internet at www.whoopfm.com. You can call us here at 614-5553. That's 614-5553. Pam, if you have any good stories. You told her you were going somewhere else today, didn't you?
Yeah. She didn't know about this.
We're talking to Randall Higgins here today, over 40 years of newspaper reporting for the Cleveland Daily Banner and the Chattanooga Times. So give him a call if you got any questions about stories he may have covered, or if you know anything about his cousin Krill Higgins.
Yeah.
I'm sure he'd like to hear a story about him also. So give us a call here at 614-5553.
Baby,
go ahead.
Speaking of Flint Springs, do you remember the day you gave me the guided tour down there of the Martin House?
Yes.
I thoroughly enjoyed that day, and the couple that lived there, I can't think of their names now.
Christina and Jerry
Jackson?
No.
Sounded good.
Well, what I remember the story was, though, is that you kind of suspected at the time the history of that place, and just sort of showed up on their doorstep one day and knocked on the door and said, "By the way, do you know you live in
Griffith is their last name." Well, the funny thing is I just kind of showed up one day and said, I think you live in a historic house. And they said,
really?
Well, really. Well, they had been told when they bought it that it was a 100-year-old farmhouse.
Uh-huh.
Well, it was a 200-year-old house.
Yeah.
And so I showed up with all my documentation in place, and of course they were thrilled. And I had told them that if they ever, I was trying to ask Jerry, who had done immense work on that place, if you recall.
Right, yeah.
He had done a lot of restoration,
and
and when you get an old house like that, it's a constant something. And I had told them if they ever pulled up the floor that the logs should look like, and I told them what it should look like. The pioneers came in and kind of did dovetails, but before that the Indians just had real straight pegs on their logs, narrow straight pegs, so it would expand and contract.
Mm-hmm.
Well, they called me in the middle of the biggest rainstorm I'd seen yesterday, and I went down there. They had to pull up a corner of the floor, and there were those logs.
Mm-hmm.
And that's really the one that the National Park Service said, yes, it's that old, immediately, without looking at it. So it was pretty exciting. Then I went out to Oklahoma to the National Trail of Tears meeting, and all of a sudden, poof, there was the house up on the giant screen, and they were showing the 4 or 5 places in the United States that had been named as being... significant on the Trail of Tears, and there it was.
Well, I remember that day I went down there with you to do my story. It was very hot, as I remember, and we were outside. We finally got down, crawling around, looking underneath the house and all that.
That was
it's a beautiful, beautiful house, though.
It is, and they have big brown signs there now from the National Park Service.
Yeah,
and so that's going to be when you're entering Flint Springs community at that point.
Mm-hmm. And it's amazing how much history is there. That's where people started coming into Bradley County, I guess, out of Georgia.
It was where when the Cherokees were chased out of Georgia.
Yeah, the old John
They
Ross,
came over into that area and started living, and it's well documented because there was a lot of turmoil there.
Mm-hmm.
So it's well documented, and you're looking at the Cumberland Presbyterian Church. Flint Springs Cumberland Presbyterian Church has been there since 1871. The Red Hill United Methodist Church, that building has been there since the 1870s or 80s. But now they've had documented church services since like 1824 on that site.
Mm-hmm.
And so we're working to get the Red Hill United Methodist Church, the cemetery, the Blackburn House and Barn designated as a historic district, and the Springs. The Springs is really the selling factor there because that people camped around it and we have documentation. And then Flint Springs has a church and a cemetery. The White House where you go into Flint Springs is from the 1870s. The house by the springs, I don't know how old it is, but then that was John Ross's farm.
Is Liberty Cemetery on Spring Place Road, is that considered part of that area?
No, that would be quite a distance away.
Yeah, okay.
The church was across the street from Liberty.
Mm-hmm.
And the building was moved on South McCoy Street, and that's the church that was across the street from Templeton Hills, what they started with when they built that. Can you imagine moving a church building that far?
At that time.
At that time.
Yeah.
Randall, we've talked about some of the great stories that you've been involved in the history of our area. You've been there, seen it firsthand, and shared with most of our area here what we know about things that have happened here. But now I ask you, what was the absolute wackiest assignment you ever got? What was the crazy thing? You got there and go, what am I doing here? And then maybe it turned out to be a lot of fun. What you have anything that just pops in your head?
This became a national news story, actually.
All right.
And it didn't happen in Bradley County. It happened over in Tullahoma, Arnold Engineering Development Center, which was run by the U.S. Air Force, still is, I guess. And at the time, they did a lot of space research, which is one reason I was there. Billy Warren was my city editor then, and he was a Reserve Air Force, and he actually sent me down to Marshall Space Flight Center, which is where I was for the first few shuttle flights. They developed the booster engines down there. So, but that has nothing to do with this story. I was at Arnold Engineering Development Center, and this was early on when they were trying to decide why plane crashes happened with flocks of birds, getting crashed into them. The engineers over there came up with this machine that threw chickens at jet airplane windshields. So we have this like a pulley system, dead chickens flying as fast as they can go into the windshields of the jets. Just types of them, of course. Anyway, all those chickens hitting all those windshields at rapid speed. I thought that was funny anyway, and did some stories about it that.
Because it's not your windshield.
Yeah,
it's pretty
that's right.
funny.
But that made national.